It begins with silence. Not the kind of silence you hear in an empty room. A different kind. A digital silence. A woman wakes up and reaches for her phone, just like every morning. Her thumb moves automatically, opening the same app she checks dozens of times a day. But it doesn't load. She refreshes. Nothing. She checks her connection. It's fine. She tries another app. Same result. Across the world, millions of people are having the exact same moment. No feeds, no messages, no notifications, no endless scrolling. At first, people assume it's a temporary outage. Servers go down sometimes. Platforms crash. It happens. But minutes turn into hours. Hours turn into something else. Confusion. Because it's not just one platform. It's all of them. Every social network has disappeared. No Instagram. No TikTok. No X. No Facebook. No YouTube comments. No messaging inside platforms. No stories. No likes. No followers. Nothing. It is as if the entire layer of human connection built on social media has been erased overnight. The internet still exists. Websites still load. Emails still work. But the social world is gone. First, people laugh. Some even feel relief. No pressure to check notifications. No endless comparison. No constant updates. For a few hours, it feels quiet, peaceful. But then the consequences begin. Influencers are the first to realize what has happened. A woman in Los Angeles, who built her entire career online, opens her phone again and again, staring at empty screens. Millions of followers, gone. Years of content, gone. Her audience no longer exists in a place she can reach. Across the world, millions of people who depended on social media for income suddenly lose everything. Content creators, streamers, digital marketers, personal brands. Their businesses collapse instantly because their audience was never truly theirs. It belonged to platforms, and now those platforms are gone. Companies feel the shock next. Modern businesses rely heavily on social media for visibility. Advertising, customer communication, brand identity, all of it disappears overnight. Small businesses suffer the most. A local bakery that depended on daily posts to attract customers suddenly becomes invisible. An online store that sold products through social ads loses its primary source of traffic. Even large corporations struggle. Entire marketing departments become useless in a single day. The global advertising system takes a massive hit. Billions of dollars vanish with the platforms that carried them. Meanwhile, something else begins changing. Information flow. For years, news spread through social media faster than any traditional system. Now that channel is gone. Breaking news slows down. Viral stories disappear. The concept of something becoming trending vanishes completely. People return to older sources. Television, radio, news websites. But the speed is different. Slower, more controlled, more filtered. The chaotic, rapid exchange of ideas that once defined the internet fades away. And for some, this feels like a loss. Because social media was not just entertainment. It was a voice. Millions of people used it to express opinions, share experiences, and connect with others. Now that voice is gone. At the same time, personal communication begins shifting. People who relied on social platforms to stay in touch suddenly feel disconnected. Friends who only interacted through likes and comments no longer communicate. Group chats inside apps disappear. Digital communities vanish. Entire networks of human connection dissolve overnight. And something strange happens. People start realizing how many of their relationships existed only online. Without those platforms, those relationships fade instantly. Meanwhile, others experience something unexpected. Freedom. No more constant comparison. No more endless streams of curated lives. No more pressure to present a perfect version of reality. The mental noise decreases. People spend less time looking at screens. They look around more. They notice their surroundings. They talk to people physically present instead of those far away. But this adjustment is not easy, because for years, social media shaped human behavior. Attention spans shortened. Validation came from likes. Identity became tied to online presence. Now all of that disappears, and people feel it. The urge to check notifications, the instinct to share moments, the habit of documenting life instead of simply living it. All of it remains, but there is nowhere to send it. Meanwhile, governments and analysts begin studying the situation. They notice something fascinating. Without social media, society becomes less reactive. Fewer sudden waves of outrage. Fewer viral conflicts. Fewer rapid shifts in public opinion. Information spreads more slowly, which means people have more time to think. But it also means fewer voices are heard, because social media gave individuals a platform. Without it, communication returns to more centralized systems. Power shifts again, back toward institutions, back toward traditional media. The world becomes quieter, but also more controlled. And as the first full day without social media comes to an end, humanity begins realizing something profound. For over a decade, people lived inside a second world, a digital layer of reality where attention, influence, and identity existed. Now that layer is gone, and the question everyone begins asking is simple. Without social media, who are we when no one is watching? At first, people try to recreate it. The silence left by social media feels too sudden, too unnatural. Humanity had grown used to a constant stream of updates, opinions, images, and reactions flowing through every moment of the day. Now that stream is gone, and people begin searching for it. Within days, new platforms attempt to appear. Small websites, private networks, decentralized apps. Developers rush to rebuild what was lost. But something strange happens. None of them grow, because the original platforms did not just exist as technology. They existed as ecosystems. Billions of people gathered in the same place. That concentration of attention created power. Without it, new platforms feel empty. A social network with only a few thousand users does not feel like a global space. It feels small, fragmented, and without massive audiences, the system that once drove engagement begins failing. There is no viral, no global conversation, no shared moment experienced by millions at the same time. Humanity loses its digital crowd. Meanwhile, people begin adjusting their behavior. The first major change appears in attention. Without endless scrolling, people suddenly find themselves with time. Hours that were once spent watching videos, reading comments, or refreshing feeds become empty space in the day. At first, this feels uncomfortable. People reach for their phones automatically. They open apps that are no longer there. They refresh screens that show nothing. But slowly, the habit begins breaking. People start filling that time with other things. Reading, walking, talking to others in person. For the first time in years, boredom returns. And with it, something unexpected. Creativity. Without constant input from social media, the brain begins generating its own ideas again. Artists create without thinking about likes. Writers write without chasing trends. Musicians compose without worrying about algorithms. The pressure to perform disappears. But so does the instant feedback. And that changes motivation. Because for many people, social media was not just a platform. It was validation, a way to measure worth through attention. Likes, shares, comments, followers. Without those signals, people begin questioning themselves. Am I interesting? Am I successful? Am I seen? The external mirror disappears, and people are left with their own internal sense of identity. Some grow stronger. They become less dependent on approval. Others struggle because they had built their identity around visibility. Meanwhile, businesses begin transforming. Without social media advertising, companies must find new ways to reach customers. Some return to traditional methods: billboards, television, radio. Others focus on direct relationships: email newsletters, websites, in-person experiences. Local communities become more important. Word of mouth returns as one of the most powerful forms of marketing. Because in a world without social media, trust becomes more valuable than reach. People rely on recommendations from people they actually know, instead of anonymous opinions online. The economy begins stabilizing in a new form: slower, more local, less driven by sudden trends. At the same time, something changes in how information spreads. Without viral content, news travels differently. Stories move through networks of trust rather than algorithms. False information becomes harder to spread quickly, but true information also spreads more slowly. The world becomes less reactive, but also less connected. Global conversations become rare, because there is no single place where everyone gathers anymore. Instead, there are many smaller conversations happening in isolated spaces. Humanity becomes fragmented, but also more grounded. Meanwhile, relationships begin evolving. Without social media, people cannot maintain hundreds of casual connections. The weak ties fade, the strong ones remain. Friendships become deeper but fewer. People invest more time in those who are physically present. Long-distance relationships become harder to maintain because communication requires more effort. Calls instead of messages, intentional contact instead of passive interaction. And that changes how people value connection, because when communication requires effort, it becomes more meaningful. But perhaps the most profound transformation happens in influence. For years, influence was measured by numbers: followers, views, engagement. Now those metrics are gone. A person cannot become famous overnight through a viral post. Influence returns to something slower: reputation, expertise, trust built over time. Leaders emerge not because they attract attention, but because people choose to listen. And as months pass, humanity begins realizing something unexpected. Social media did not just connect people. It also shaped reality. It decided what people saw, what they believed, what they cared about. Without it, the world becomes quieter, less dramatic, less extreme, but also less amplified. Human emotions stabilize. People experience fewer sudden waves of outrage or excitement. Life feels more consistent, less intense, more real, and eventually a new normal appears. A world where people still use the internet, still communicate, still share ideas, but without the constant layer of performance. Without the need to be seen by everyone, only by someone. And in that quieter world, a question slowly emerges. Was social media connecting humanity, or was it changing what it meant to be human? Because now that it is gone, people are no longer living for an audience. They are simply living.